Well, folks, after dominating this past weekend at Phoenix and winning the Cup race on Sunday, Busch is now only just one win away from tying Richard Petty's winning record at 200. So not only he be winning 200 races, but he'll also be the winningest driver in all three touring divisions at 200 apiece if he does break the record. So, what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, we'll recap Phoenix, and then we will conclude with the West Coast swing that NASCAR will be going to California / Auto Club Speedway this weekend. Should be a lot of fun racing this weekend, especially with this new aero package. I'm looking forward to it. So he's Chris. My name's Corey, and this is the C&J Speedway Review. And once again, folks, welcome back to the C&J Speedway Review on this lovely Thursday night. My name is Corey Huffnagel, and tonight we're going to recap Phoenix race weekend. Of course, Kyle Busch sweeping the weekend, not only gets his 94th career Xfinity win, and then also, of course, gets his 53rd Cup Series win, but also now he is one win away of tying 200. So could it happen this weekend? Could it happen next weekend? Well, we'll just have to see and find out. So let's go to the hotline now, and always a pleasure of talking to the man who now sports Mobile One. Of course, his name is Chris Burns himself. And Chris, all I could just say is, we're just one win away of 200. You think Kyle Busch is going to get that record?
Chicken in the corn.
Me at 1:30 in the morning.
Okay. By the way, free hat. Won this online. Very nice Mobile One Kevin Harvick gimmick from last year. So thank you to whatever company I did the online gimmick for. But I got a free hat, so that's all that matters. Do I think Kyle Busch is going to get 200 this weekend? It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because we go to Auto Club Speedway, and I know although he's had some really good luck there, I don't necessarily see this being a Kyle Busch weekend. Then again, I've thought that in the past. So I guess it's only fitting that that's why we watch the races. And that's why they run the races. So we don't go and say, Kyle Busch is going to do it this weekend. We go back to the question, does that make him the greatest of all time? Time will tell. He's a young man, 33 years old. He's probably still got 15 years of good racing in him. We'll find out if Kyle Busch is regarded as the greatest of all time, but there are three names he's going to have to jump over, and especially this list of names that Corey just gave to me before air that he may have to jump over because these are the Hall of Fame names. But the big three, Johnson, Earnhardt, Petty, you got a long way to go, Kyle, before you reach that status.
Exactly.
So, Mr. Corey Huffnagel, what is in the news that you'd like to talk about this week before we break down the action that was at Phoenix?
So, NASCAR announced just yesterday that they announced the nominees for the NASCAR Hall of Fame for the class of 2020. And no big surprise, but also one of the guys that's listed on this nominee class is none other than three-time champion Tony Stewart himself. And honestly, I have to say this is like Jeff Gordon, there's no doubt in my mind that Tony Stewart is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer because if you look at him, he's a three-time Cup Series champion. Of course, he didn't win the Daytona 500 as a driver, but he won as an owner, of course, now being Stewart-Haas Racing. And, of course, championships, he won twice as a driver, once as a driver-owner. And let's face it, I mean, he's won a lot of races throughout his career. I mean, he's won a couple Xfinity races. And then, of course, anything that he runs on four wheels, I mean, the guy just knows how to win it all. And quickly, other notable list of names on this list, you have Sam Ard, who is a two-time champion of the Xfinity Series, which was then the Busch Series. Buddy Baker, who won the Daytona 500 in 1980 and the Southern 500. You also have Neil Bonnet, Red Farmer, Ray Fox, Harry Gant, Joe Gibbs, John Holman, Harry Hyde, Bobby Labonte, Herschel McGriff, Ralph Moody, Marvin Panch, Jim Pascal, Larry Phillips, Ricky Rudd, Mike Stefanik, Red Vogt, Watto Wilson, and Edsel Ford, if I'm not mistakenly correct. But I think those are the nominees for the list. So now my big question to you, Chris. So if you had to pick if you had to pick 5 that go to the Hall of Fame next year, who would it be?
Okay, 4 were real easy. It's the 5th one that's going to drive me nuts, and I'll explain why when I get to them. The first and most obvious choice is Tony Stewart. For
Yeah.
everything you just said about him. Here's a young guy who came out of the IndyCar circuit, lit up the NASCAR scene. I believe he came up with a short stint in the then Busch series.
Yeah.
Exploded onto the Cup series, 3 championships, twice with Joe Gibbs, once with Stewart-Haas Racing. There's not a lot bad you can say about Tony Stewart, other than he likes cheeseburgers just a little too much.
Right.
Number 2, I would go with Harry Hyde, world-class crew chief, worked with some of the best of the best of the best in the business, and was the inspiration for the character of Harry Hogg in the greatest racing movie of all time, that being Days of Thunder. My third choice would go to Bobby Labonte, one-time champion. He was a 2-time Busch Series champion. Just a guy that I believe the first brother combination to ever win then NASCAR Winston Cups. Terry Labonte in 84 and 96 and Bobby Labonte in 2002. Am I
2000.
Right? Okay, 2000. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. My 4th pick goes to Harry Gant. There was nothing you could put Harry Gant in or nothing Harry Gant was afraid to get in and race. No one will ever forget the summer of 93. What? No, I'm sorry.
91.
91. Thank you. See, when you get old, all the dates run together. And when I get to the 3 that I think are tied, I'm going to have to pick one. I'll explain why 93 is on the brain. But Mr. September, every race that month, Harry Gant took the checkered flag. And he's just beloved. Everybody loves Harry Gant. I went to New Hampshire Motor Speedway in 2002. Harry Gant long retired, but Harry Gant had a truck set up there, a merchandise truck, with all his Skull Bandit gear there. And the line to get his autograph was so long, but I stood, and I wanted to meet the man. And when I did meet the man, I was so thrilled, so impressed, so happy. He was gracious enough. He gave everybody like 4 or 5 minutes of time. It wasn't just, here's your autograph, kid, beat it. He was so cool. So Harry Gant, for all those reasons, for, Hall of Fame right now. The 3 that I'm having a problem with, and I'm pretty sure where I'm leaning, is Buddy Baker, Red Farmer, Joe Gibbs. All of them Hall of Fame worthy. Red Farmer, I was just listening to the 10-part series on Apple Podcasts called 1993, The Season, 25 years later. Unfortunately brought to you by MRN, the voice of NASCAR. And it was a great series. But what people don't remember about Red Farmer, throw all of what you heard about his racing career aside, he was in the helicopter that unfortunately took the life of Bobby Allison.
Davey
Allison. Dude, there were so many Bobby Allison quotes in that episode. Episode 5, by the way. Go check it out. They're all available right now on Apple Podcasts. Red Farmer was in that helicopter with Davey Allison. He made it out alive. I forget who they said pulled him out, but he made it out. Lived for several more years, and now Red Farmer deserves to take a place in the Hall of Fame. Same with Buddy Baker, champion driver, champion car owner at one point. And then there's Joe Gibbs, a guy who late in life decided, you know what? I'm coaching in the NFL. I'm going to start a race team. I love racing. Okay. Well, then he transitions. He gets out of football. He devotes full time to racing. Between Joe and JD, recently departed, God rest his soul. Joe Gibbs has built one of the most monumental race teams that you'll ever find anywhere on this planet. He's right up there with the Hendricks, with the Childress, with all of the greats. So if I had to pick one of the 3, right now I'm leaning toward Joe Gibbs as my 5th member of the Hall of Fame. I look at a lot of these names like Ricky Rudd, Waddell Wilson, Red Vaught, Ralph Moody, legendary broadcaster. Just a lot of great names on this list, but you got to pick 5 every year. Those are my 5. Tony Stewart, Harry Gant, Joe Gibbs, Harry Hyde, Bobby Labonte. Fight me.
So I was actually thinking about this today, and so my 4 were kind of easy to pick. It was the 5th one that really made me start thinking, okay, like who wants it even more? So
that sounds familiar right there.
So So these are my first four as of right now. So of course, Tony Stewart is going to be a first ballot pick, no question about it. Joe Gibbs would be my second pick because, of course, with him having a really great race team, that's won numerous amount of championships. That's won 2 Daytona 500s. I mean, the guy deserves it. And of course, if Roger Penske, Richard Childress, Rick Hendrick, all those guys made it in the Hall of Fame, I really think Joe Gibbs would be the next team owner to make it in the Hall of Fame. My third one would definitely have to go to Bobby Labonte. I mean, of course, he's won championships in the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series, and not only, of course, in 2000 he won the Brickyard 400 and the Southern 500 that year. And not to mention, Bobby, of course, now is not only a broadcaster on FS1, but has also done some racing at the Whelen Euro Series in Europe a couple times and so forth. So I think Bobby makes it in. Just like, his brother Terry did. My fourth one, and this one was kind of a little bit interesting. So my fourth one would definitely have to go to Buddy Baker because I really think this is going to be the year that he makes it in. I mean, yes, he won the Daytona 500. That's the good part. And of course, he won a couple of races in his career. I mean, he didn't win a championship, but if you look at it, he was a fan favorite back in the day. And then, of course, I was fortunate enough to meet him when I was at Charlotte back in 2012. And it's funny because I actually have a picture on my Facebook somewhere. It's kind of hidden like in my albums and so forth. But so Buddy Baker would be my last one. And then my fifth one, this one was kind of a little bit of a confusing one. Well, not confusing, but it was just too tough to call. But if I had to pick one right now out of a hat, I'm going to have to say Ricky Rudd.
Okay.
Now, you look at this guy, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's second on the all-time list in number of starts that he made in his career, because I think he started in like the late 70s until up to till 2005. Then he took a year break, and then he came back again in 2007. So I think he has like 1,000 something starts in his career. I mean, of course, Rudd's never won a championship. Of course, he won the Brickyard back in '97, and he's won 23 times in his career. But just remember this, the one thing I love about Ricky Rudd is he was a really good road racer. And you take him to Riverside or Watkins Glen or Sonoma, he was one of those guys that runs those road courses really well. And it was actually cool because there was a couple times where you could actually see his foot cam and you could see him stepping off the gas and then shifting and everything else and so forth. And I really love that. So, I mean, Ricky Rudd right now would have to be my fifth pick. I mean, that might change, but I mean, those are my five that are going to make it in. I mean, if you look at it, all of them are pretty good, but like you said, five make it in every year, and we'll just have to see what happens. I'd say next month or in May when they do the votes.
And I'm very much looking forward to the announcement of who goes in. And we matched on 3 picks, and then the last 2 we were separate. But again, I look at Buddy Baker, who was right there on my list. It's so close. Ricky Rudd, I thought about. I just don't think this is his year with the amount of talent that was ahead of him. And look, none of these guys on this list don't deserve to be on this list. They're all worthy. But like you said, there are 15, 18 names on this list. You can only pick 5.
Yeah.
If I could give an honorable mention, I would love to give it to Ricky Rudd. I'd love to give it to Ray Fox or Ralph Moody. But being a local boy and knowing that Richie Evans is in the Hall of Fame, and if you've never been to the NASCAR Hall of Fame, kids, get your booties to the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte, North Carolina. What a beautiful, beautiful facility. I had the pleasure of going there in 2015, and I was just blown away. I was in tears for a lot of it. Not so much blubbering, going, oh, boo-hoo, but when you see certain things, that little tear dabbles down your face. You're looking at history. Even Angela, the Eternal Flame and the Goddess of Love upstairs, gained much more of a respect for NASCAR having walked through the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And she'll tell you as much, and she did on the Loki and Jabroni show way back when. But all of these guys, so worthy. But I don't think it's Ricky Rudd's time.
Yeah, I don't know. I do want to say he makes it in, but like I said, I mean, my fifth one was too tough to call. I mean, I do like Rudd's chances, but then yet again, there's other guys on that list that I think it's going to be very interesting on who goes in or what.
Oh, absolutely. And the same could be said for Harry Gant, my 5th pick. That took a lot of, thinking in whatever. No, Harry Gant was my fourth pick. I have to go back to Joe Gibbs now. I screwed this up tremendously. Okay. But I had Joe Gibbs going in, if I remember.
Yeah.
Yes, there he is. Okay, nope. I'm good. My list is solid. Tony Stewart, Joe Gibbs, Bobby Labonte, Harry Hyde, Harry Gant. Your list: Tony Stewart, Joe Gibbs, Bobby Labonte, Buddy Baker, Ricky Rudd. If you had an option, if to go to,
If I had an option of choosing a fifth pick, right?
if you had the option, you already picked five. You
Yeah.
picked Tony Stewart, Joe Gibbs, Bobby Labonte, Buddy Baker, Ricky Rudd. If they said to you, Corey, we're giving you the option, much like I just did with Mike Stefanik, who would you put in as the sixth member of this year's Hall of Fame?
I would pick Neil Bonnet.
Neil Bonnet, great.
Yeah.
A lot can be said about Neil Bonnet. We go back to that 1993 season, which, again, go find that podcast. The 1993 season, 25 years later, it is a great listen. If you're old like me, I relived so many great memories over the last 4 days listening to that show. Brought to you by MRN, the voice of NASCAR. And it was just so much fun. And to hear Neil Bonnet's name over and over again was really cool. But then again, we lost Neil tragically about a year or two later in a tragic accident at Daytona.
Yeah.
Now, he was a heavy-duty driver. He reminds me a lot of Ricky Rudd and Harry Gant, although those gentlemen had longer careers. Unfortunately, because of Neil Bonnet's death, he didn't get a chance to have a long career. But he was always there. Not only was he the relief driver for Dale Earnhardt when Dale Earnhardt was sick at one or two races, he was Dale Earnhardt's best friend. He was a guy that was constantly in the sport of racing, whether on the track or in the booth. I remember hearing Neil Bonnet call many a race back in the day. It's iffy this year. Just looking at the talent that's in front of me, I would buy that as a sixth honorable mention, much like Mike Stefanik. But I would actually throw Mike Stefanik to the side and move Neil Bonnet in, just for the criteria of Neil Bonnet did it on a bigger, longer.
Absolutely.
All right. So, do you have any other news, notes, or noteworthy things that we should talk about before we dive into Kyle Busch Raceway at Phoenix?
So as of yesterday, NASCAR came up with another rule change, and this time
it's starting to sound like the early 2000s all over again.
So this time, NASCAR announced yesterday that they are going to be enforcing a speed limit on pit road during Monster Energy Cup Series qualifying beginning this weekend at Auto Club Raceway. So if you remember a few weeks ago when there were guys that were rushing out on pit road trying to get onto the track, I think, NASCAR kind of thought of it and said, like, there could be people down there, and if somebody jumps out, and if they hit someone, then boom, that wouldn't be too good. So I think NASCAR, I think this is a good call that they're doing this. So, and not to mention, it's also because of safety. And I think NASCAR, I applaud them for this one. So as it states, a driver exceeding the pit road speed limit exiting the track will be called down to pit road before being eligible to post the qualifying time. However, if a driver exceeds the pit road speeding, returning to the pits, his posted time on the qualifying board would be disallowed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look, I'm all for the safety, and this goes back to not only the death of Dale Earnhardt Sr. at the 2001 Daytona 500, but the accident with Dale Jarrett at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, where everybody's racing back to the caution, which you could still do back then. I believe that was 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
And the car's on fire, and that's when they freeze the field for the caution. I'm all for it. But I got to ask, during qualifying, who's going to jump out onto pit lane when the cars are taking off at breakneck speeds? Remember, I come from an era where there was no pit road speed. So you got in as fast as you could. You got out as fast as you could. Yes, there were injuries, but there were few or far between. I dig the safety aspect. But honestly, and that's my question to you, or you, the NASCAR fan listening, who's going to run out onto pit road? Who's in danger other than the crew members? And I'm not downplaying the crew members. I'm just asking, during qualifying, who's really in danger?
Well, I think probably there's also officials on pit road as well.
Good call by you.
Yeah.
It's not like 1993. I'm going back to that year again, where in Pocono, Kyle Petty and Davey Allison are battling for the lead, and a fan ran across the track.
Yeah.
Lucky he didn't get killed. That little. I wish I knew where that guy was. I'd invite him on the show. So why'd you do it? Because I was drunk. I was drinking Rolling Rock in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Anyway, good call by NASCAR, actually. I have no problem with anything that ensures the safety of drivers, crew members, officials, fans, or otherwise. Great call.
Yeah.
All right, so this weekend, Phoenix, the ISM Raceway, which I've called for, we've been doing this show now since 2017. I've affectionately called Kevin Harvick Raceway. This past weekend became Kyle Busch Raceway, sweeping both races. But first, we want to talk about his win in the Xfinity Series. Watched the greatest hits package. I looked at, the, what do they call it on the NASCAR app, lap by lap, all the tweets that NASCAR sends out, and just to see, this was Kyle Busch Day. They should have had a parade for him. They should have gave him the key to the city. To Kyle Busch. Now, he may not have led the most laps on the Cup race, but I believe he led the most laps on the Xfinity race. Am I wrong?
He led 116 out of 200 laps.
Well, see, there you go. No one's going to beat that. And as I'm looking, yes, he did lead the most laps on the Cup race as well. There was really no one that could touch him. There wasn't, from what I saw, from what I read, from what I've heard, from just listening to racing radio over the last few days since Saturday and Sunday, no one could touch him. Is this indicative of him working on a lower level, or him being Kyle Busch in large capital letters flashing like the KISS sign at a concert?
I'd probably say it's mostly just Kyle Busch in capital letters and stuff. But I think going back to Saturday's race, nobody couldn't touch him except Christopher Bell. And I'd have to say, after Bell started on the pole, I would say that, it was going to be a battle between him and the 20 car. And from the looks of it, there was one part in the race, I think it was, I have to say, with 131 out of 200, there was a car that was smoking going into turn 3 and 4. So Stephen Light ended up getting out a plume of smoke when it was like in the closing laps of the race. So what happened was, Justin Allgaier and Christopher Bell, they couldn't see a thing. So that resulted in Bell hitting the wall, and then Justin, he got some like minimal damage, but he was still able to rebound after finishing in 14th or whatever. But of course, with the 30th place finish, that's what pretty much ruined Christopher Bell's day. And even Kyle Busch said in his interview, he said, Bell was going to give me a run for my money, and then yet again, during the whole entire race, I think it was the third stage, nobody couldn't touch Kyle Busch, and I would have to say that ever since they redid this whole racetrack about a year ago, I think Kyle Busch now is probably the most successful one of this track, because we saw, Kevin Harvick be dominated at this track, for a number of years, and now it's just pretty much turning into the Kyle Busch Raceway.
Well, I mean, again, we go back to Phoenix later in the year, and we'll find out if Kyle Busch can actually repeat. And look, again, guys, I have to say it out loud. I don't think Kyle Busch is a terrible racer. He could run in my driveway and beat Corey, myself, anybody we put in front of him. The guy is that good.
Yeah.
I just think sometimes when he works below the Cup level, I mean, he's playing with house money at this point.
Yeah.
And that's not to knock people like Christopher Bell, Cole Custer, Austin Cindric, and your championship contenders. Think about it this way. You're a Red Sox fan. Who's your best pitcher?
Our best pitcher would have to be Chris Sale.
Okay, Chris Sale. I was going to say the same thing. Now, the Pawtucket Red Sox are having a little bit of an issue. They're in third place, but they're only 3 games out. We need some help. If Chris Sale goes to Pawtucket and pitches on that level and propels the Paw Sox to a championship, for those of you out in the Midwest, West Coast, wherever, the Pawtucket Red Sox are the AAA team of the Boston Red Sox. Does that necessarily make Chris Sale awesome, or is he working below his standard?
Probably say working below his standard.
What's the difference between Chris Sale and Kyle Busch?
If you look at it, they're both in the majors. That's what it is.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So, again, not knocking. Look, if they allow, I said it before, they allow Kyle to go down there 5 times a year, do it. Run anything that moves. Ken Schrader did it. Mark Martin did it. A whole bunch of other guys did it. The difference between those names and Kyle Busch is that big trophy Kyle Busch raised above his shoulder in 2015.
Yeah.
And that's what I have to say about that. But again, Kyle Busch keeps knocking the history books asunder every single week. And as we go down the running order, we see Kyle Busch comes in first, Ryan Truex second, Tyler Reddick third, Cole Custer fourth, Austin Cindric fifth, Chase Briscoe sixth, Brandon Jones seventh, Michael Annett eighth, John Hunter Nemechek ninth, and Ryan Sieg rounds out the top 10. Your other notables, Noah Gragson 11th, Justin Haley 12th. Moving down, Justin Allgaier 14th, Greg Galding 16th, Ross Chastain 17th, Chad Fincham 19th, everybody's most hated driver, BJ McLeod 21st. Then we have Joey Gase in 24th, a disappointing run for our man Christopher Bell in 30th. And Jeff Green did not finish last. Once again, he comes home in 33rd, but the last name I'm going to mention is the ever ageless Morgan Shepherd. He of a victory in 1993. I'm going to bring that up a lot until you guys go out and listen to that 10-part series. 1993, 25 years after. Morgan Shepherd comes home in 34th. Corey, I need a happy and I need a sad, and I need it now.
All right. So my happy for this one, this might interest some people, but my happy, I'm going to go with Ryan Sieg. And not because he finished 10th this past weekend, but for those of you guys that don't know, Sieg's getting off to a really great start this season. And if you look at his results, 4th at Daytona, 11th at Atlanta, 6th at Vegas, 10th at Phoenix. This just goes to myself that, something tells me that I really think Sieg and this 39 team, could possibly have that breakout win sometime this season. And I just look at him this year. And of course, I was listening on the radio this afternoon. I guess that Sieg is getting their cars from Richard Childress Racing. And then, of course, they're getting their engines from ECR Motors. And I kind of thought to myself, I really think, this 39 team is going to be fun to watch this year, especially when it comes to super speedways, because if he can finish 4th at Daytona, I could probably expect them to run a lot better at Talladega in April and possibly can get that breakout win. Of course, my sad, I'm going to have to go with Christopher Bell. I mean, I really thought it was going to be the Bell and Busch show. And then, of course, Bell getting caught up in that crash after there was fluid on the racetrack and he couldn't see a thing and so forth. But many more out of 33 races to come, and we'll just see how Bell does this year.
I'm going to agree with you on the set. I also had Christopher Bell. Oh my God. Pizza Jones right here. He took the pole. He was running well, and then a crash. The 3 letters that no championship-worthy driver wants to hear are DNF. And Christopher Bell racked up a DNF this weekend. It sucks for him, but I really do think he's going to bounce back in the weeks and months to come. My happy goes to Tyler Reddick. The champ is here. He doesn't have any wins this season, but he comes home with a 3rd-place finish. He's actually making it look, and look, nobody says he doesn't deserve last year's championship, but he's making it look like you're going to have to contend with me to get that trophy come November in Homestead.
And of course, Reddick's getting off to a great start this year with RCR as well.
Absolutely. And it's a great fit for him.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go to the points and then the picks. There's going to be some disappointment this week in the picks. I'm just going to say that out loud. And first, we go to the points. Tyler Reddick leads the way with 169. Christopher Bell in second with 165 and a win. Cole Custer third with 158. Michael Annett fourth with 147 in a virtual tie with Brandon Jones in fifth, also with 147. Austin Cindric is in sixth with 141. John Hunter Nemechek seventh with 140. Noah Gragson 8th with 130. Justin Allgaier 9th with 128. And Ryan Sieg rounds out your top 10 with 126. Ross Chastain 11th with 116 and a virtual tie with Justin Haley in 12th, also 116. Chase Briscoe is in 13th with 112. Forgive me for forgetting this gentleman's name, but B. Brown.
Yeah.
Who the heck is B. Brown?
Don't you mean Brandon Brown?
Brandon Brown, sure, why not?
Yeah.
He's in 14th with 85. Jeffrey Earnhardt, my man, staying strong in 15th with 76, and Gray Gaulding rounds out the top 16 with 70 points. Okay, so before we close the book on Xfinity and we go to the picks, Kyle Busch comes down. He takes a couple of wins away. They're 4 races in. Only 2 regulars have wins, Christopher Bell and Michael Annett. Does that sully the pond of championship contenders, or does that make everybody work harder?
I think it makes everybody work harder because, like I've said before, like, when you have the Cup guys come down and, they win all the races, I mean, yeah, and like I said this before, it makes these guys want to race a little harder because, of course, not only they got to get those stage points, which of course the Cup drivers, take those points in the trucks and Xfinity races, but they also want to get, the race wins. So then that ought to way, like they punch their ticket into the playoffs. But I probably said this before, like, this year you're going to see some of the Cup guys make it down, but you're not going to see a lot of them, run this season. I mean, you'll only see guys like Kyle Busch and then, of course, Ryan Preece and Keselowski, Logano, and Blaney. But I'd probably say this year you're not going to see a lot of them run this year, considering the fact that, with the Cup guys have more than 5 years of experience, you're only going to have to run 5 races. So I would have to say that once it gets to playoff time and we don't see any of the Cup drivers running those lower 2 divisions, then it's going to be very interesting to see, which of the regulars are going to be the ones to watch and which of the ones, that they could win races and win the championship.
Good point. Now we go to the picks. Somebody's getting ready to be disappointed. Let's find out who. Corey took Justin Allgaier as his lock. He finished 14th. He took Tyler Reddick as his sleeper. He finished 3rd. That's a total of 17. You divide that by 2. That's a finish of 8.5. Top 10 Jones, my man.
Oh, yeah.
Problem. Kyle Busch is his lock. He finished 1st. He took Cole Custer as his sleeper. He finished 4th. That's a finish of 5. And with that, with a 2.5 finish, I took the 2 points for the Xfinity Series, which is odd because I usually lose this particular series. I do well with the trucks. I do well with the Cup. I usually poop the bed with the Xfinity Series. Corey will tell you that. But, hey, good run is a good run, right?
Well, let's just say you got lucky this weekend.
Yeah, well, I kind of hedged my bet a little bit and took Kyle Busch. Had I took my original lock, let me grab this real quick. Let me go back down the list. La 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 la. My original lock that I wanted to take finished with a DNF in 30th. So there you go. I went the Corey route. I took Kyle Busch. You put Kyle Busch in a race car, he's going to find a way to win.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Anyway, going back to Kyle Busch Raceway, we had the Ticket Guardian 500. And once again, Kyle Busch leads the most laps. Looked strong throughout that whole race. And I only got to see half the race. I listened to it on MRN, the voice of NASCAR. Yay. And just listening to it was the Blaney and Busch show. Ryan Blaney, even when I got home, they were swapping the lead. Ryan Blaney looked great. But again, there's only one Kyle Busch. And to beat him means you've done something. Did you watch the entire race?
I did.
What, other than Busch and Blaney, and talk about Busch and Blaney for a second, because I'd love to know what your thoughts were on the Busch and Blaney show. Was there anybody else that impressed you? Because as I look down the list, I look at guys that have traditionally been strong at ISM Raceway that basically were a puddle of suck.
I mean, I'd probably say the one driver that I'd say, impressed me besides Blaney would have to be Eric Almirola. I mean, coming home fourth on Sunday. I mean, I think this is, I think this is a really good step for this team. And throughout this whole entire race, I mean, yeah, I mean, going back to the closing laps, there was one part in the race where, some drivers had to play the fuel strategy game.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you had Blaney that was out for like a couple laps. And then, you could just see Kyle Busch just chasing him down lap after lap after lap. There was one part in the closing laps where, Blaney was trying to get by a lap car. And then, of course, he was kind of squeezed in by the lap car. It was kind of held in. And then that's when Kyle Busch just closed in. And then he took the lead and didn't look back. And, but to look at your result, Busch led 177 out of 312 laps on Sunday. Blaney led 94. Almirola led like 26 laps, which is also impressive. But
yes,
but you look at and yeah, of course, Blaney and Busch, they won the 2 stages and whatnot, and and also there was one other part in the race where Chase Elliott got black flag for jumping the start, and this kind of made me thinking, okay, like if they would have moved the start finish line to the middle of the dog leg, I would have been okay with it. But no, I mean, you just look at it. I mean, it's pretty much the Kyle Busch Raceway, ever since they reconfigured this track. But if Busch can go back in November and sweep both races, I mean, we might have to write the books into this because. I mean, I also look at this, I really expected Kevin Harvick to be dominant. I really thought he was going to be up there leading laps, but he wasn't anywhere in the top 5 on Sunday. I mean, finishing 9th, I mean, it was a good run for him, but I was also kind of surprised because I'm thinking like, this was a track that Kevin Harvick used to win at a lot. Mm-hmm. And now you don't see him winning a lot. And now it's just mostly, Kyle Busch every time like you go to Phoenix.
Well, you have to remember he did win at Phoenix last year, Kevin Harvick. Pronouns pal. He's the desert dominator. He's got, how many wins real quick? I want you to do the comparison because I know you got your other computer up. Kyle Busch wins at Phoenix versus Kevin Harvick wins at Phoenix. Start with Kyle, go to Kevin.
All right.
Now, while you're doing that, I want to point out something to all of you listening. In all the years I've watched racing, in all the years that Phoenix has been a part of this, I have never seen in my lifetime only 6 leaders at Phoenix. Only 6 people led laps. Daniel Hemrick, Jimmy Johnson. How's that? Jimmy Johnson led some laps. Denny Hamlin, Eric Almirola, Ryan Blaney, and Kyle Busch. That doesn't happen at Phoenix. Lead changes are asunder because of the green flag pit stops and all these other things. 6 lead changes, that's it. That was great. It made it for such exciting racing. Go ahead, Corey.
All right. So if you look at it, I think, let's see.
You're doing too much. Come on. Come on.
All right. So let's see. I think Busch has, I'd say, 4 wins at Phoenix, if I'm doing the math right, because I know he won back in 2005.
Yes.
Of course. So I think he's got like 3 or 4 wins, maybe 5. And then I know Harvick, I think he's got like 6.
9.
Okay.
So until you pass the Desert Dominator, they can share the name. It can be the Kevin Harvick Kyle Busch Speedway.
Okay.
And I'll buy it 1,000%. But again, I can't deny the talent of Kyle Busch, as much as I hate to say his name, as much as when the race was over and I was MFing all over the room, and I think I texted a friend of mine who's a Kyle Busch fan. I said, F Kyle Busch, I'm done. I'm doing this. I walked out of the room, and Angela looked up and said, who won? And I shook my head. She goes, not again. Like, yup. But look, I look at it like this. Last year, Kyle Busch 8 wins. Kevin Harvick 8 wins. 9 if you count the All-Star race. They dominated last season. This is akin to watching Jeff Gordon win 11 races in a season. I'm only surmising that in 1993, once again, that year comes up. Go find that podcast on Apple Podcasts. 1993, the season, 25 years later, from MRN, the voice of NASCAR. And Rusty Wallace wins 10 races, but comes in second in the championship. When Jeff Gordon had his big winning year, he didn't win the championship. Terry Labonte won the championship in 96. I can only imagine what it's like not to be a fan of this driver. When Rusty did it, I was a fan. I was, yay! I'd been a Rusty Wallace fan since 1986. When Jeff Gordon did it, I was still a Rusty Wallace fan. And I wanted Jeff Gordon to be hit by a bus and taste his own blood. Not die, but you know how it feels. Being a Red Sox fan, you know how it feels to watch the Yankees win and win and win. And finally, when you get yours, and now you've had yours 4 or 5 times since 2004, it's amazing. But if you're on the other side of that bubble, it sucks.
Yeah.
So to watch Kyle Busch or hear Kyle Busch or just experience Kyle Busch over and over and over again, I can sympathize, but I can also sit on that side and say, if I'm wearing that gear, if that's my guy, I'm loving it right now.
Actually, so to answer your question, Kyle Busch has 3 wins at Phoenix, and his average finish is 11.7.
Okay.
And of course, Kevin Harvick has 9 wins, and his average finish is a 9.30.
Okay, still Kevin Harvick Raceway, but I'm willing to share at this point.
Yeah.
Willing to share. But having said that, sharing goes out the window. Let's go to the finishing order as we mentioned. Kyle Busch finishes first, Martin Truex second, Ryan Blaney third, Eric Almirola fourth, Denny Hamlin fifth, Kyle Larson sixth, Kurt Busch seventh. Jimmy Johnson rolls home in eighth, Kevin Harvick in ninth. I know, we both said it just a minute ago. How does this happen? And Joey Logano, Ciampini, comes in 10th. Other notables, we have Ryan Newman in 11th. He, a former Phoenix winner. Chase Elliott, 14th. Paul Menard, 17th. Brad Keselowski, 19th. Austin Dillon, 21st. Daniel Suarez, 23rd. Ross Chastain, 27th. Ryan Preece, 34th. And Alex Bowman, 35th. Now, my happy is going to shock some people, but I think this run for this young man leading 94 laps, Ryan Blaney definitely deserves my happy. It would be easy to pick Kyle Busch. It would be easy to pick my daughter Emma's favorite driver, Martin Truex Jr. It would be easy to pick anyone in that top 10. But Ryan Blaney was just as dominant as Kyle Busch was. We mentioned the Blaney and Busch show. This kid, championship contender this year, mark it down, I said it, on Pi Day, that Ryan Blaney will be in the championship for come Homestead.
I could see that.
Now, my said, I had 2 names in mind, but I'm going to just only take one. And I'm going to go with Ryan Preece. Again, this kid needs something. He needs anything. Bad luck has just befallen this kid ever since he got in the 47. He is better than what we've seen.
Yeah.
So now give me your happy and give me your sad.
All right, so my happy would definitely go to, I'm going to say, Jimmy Johnson finishing 8th.
Wow!
So finishing 8th on Sunday.
No, wait. Before you say anything, think about that.
Yeah.
You're happy that Jimmy Johnson finished 8th. Guys, think about this. All of you. We're happy that Jimmy Johnson finished 8th. Go ahead, sir.
Well, we're happy. We're happy that he comes home 8th this past weekend, and not to mention he has 2 top 10 finishes this year, not only finishing 9th at Daytona, but also 8th at Phoenix as well. So my sad for this one, I'm going to have to go to Alex Bowman. I mean, I really wanted to see him have a really good run, especially at his home track, and not to mention getting caught up in a wreck. Disappointing run for that 88 team.
Understood. Absolutely. 1,000%. That was my other pick, by the way.
Yeah.
When it came to the sads, they finished right behind each other, 34, 35, Preece, Bowman. Man, you just can't talk enough about these young guns and how much potential they have, but they get caught up in stupid things. And unfortunately, we still hate BJ McLeod, by the way. All of us.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the points. Kyle Busch takes over the lead with 177, 1 win. Joey Logano second, 171, 1 win. Kevin Harvick third with 168. Denny Hamlin, 165 and fourth with 1 win. Martin Truex Jr. is fifth. Kyle Larson sixth. Eric Almirola seventh. Brad Keselowski eighth with 1 win. Kurt Busch ninth. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is 10th. Clint Boyer is 11th. Ryan Blaney 12th. Chase Elliott 13th. Eric Jones 14th, Jimmy Johnson 15th, Alex Bowman rounds out your top 16. And the next four are Ryan Newman 17th, William Byron 18th, Paul Menard 19th, and Daniel Suarez 20th. Again, looking at the names, looking at the talent, looking that anything can change. When I look at this list, I see winner, 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 winner. Stop me when this gets old. Winner, 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 not so much. Winner, not a winner, winner, not a winner. So you have three drivers in the top 20 who have yet to collect a cup victory, and you have 17 drivers who have.
Yeah.
This is very competitive. The difference between first and 20th is only 100 points. That can change in a heartbeat. A couple bad weeks by Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, and you could see names like Byron, Menard, and Suarez jump up the list. I know it's too early to surmise, but I'm going to take the bottom four. Newman, Byron, Menard, Suarez. Who makes the 16 at the end of the year and who doesn't?
So, am I picking one or just four?
You're going to take one that moves into the 16, one that does not.
Okay. So, my one driver that I really think could have a shot at making the top 16, I'm going to have to go with Daniel Suarez. Now, even though he's with a really good ride for Stuart Haas, I really want to see a lot of good runs out of this team. Hopefully they can get that first win and then lock themselves in the playoffs, no question about it. And of course, my one driver that I have to take out would have to be Alex Bowman.
Oh, Alex Bowman's in 16. Wow.
Yep.
You broke the rules. I like it. Look at you go. All right. Well, if I have to put one into the 16 and one that won't make it, I think William Byron makes it. There's something about William Byron that I think he's going to find his way to victory lane this year. He's also going to find more top fives, more top tens, build up the points, maybe take a couple stages here and there, and build enough points to be credible in the championship 16. One that I don't think will make it, you know what, and I'm going to play by your rules with after I mention who of these four aren't going to make it. I don't know, man. There's something about Paul Menard this season that just doesn't tell me he's got the gas to get there. But if I have to look at the top 16 and go your route and say who's not going to make the top 16, something tells me Eric Jones is our odd man out.
Yeah, I could probably see that. Yeah.
Okay. So now we go to the picks, and we will start with Corey because his lock won the race, baby. Kyle Busch.
Yay!
He finished first. He took Chase Elliott as his sleeper. He finished 14th. He took Daniel Suarez as his hopeful. He finished 23rd. That's a total of 38. You divide that by 3. Corey, just outside the top 10 with a 12.3. I took Kevin Harvick as my lock because it's Phoenix. He finished 9th. I took Ryan Newman, former winner, as my sleeper. He finished 12th. I went out on a limb and took the Eternal Flame and the Goddess of Love's driver. I took Kyle Larson as my sleeper. He finished 6th. That's a total of 27. And if you divide that by 3, I finished 9th inside the top 10. And for the first time this season, I have a Kyle Busch sweep. So as we go into the point tally for our contest, Corey comes home with no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. And I came home with 5 points. That makes the season tally 16-7. The advantage is mine right now. But then again, as we go past this weekend, when we go to Martinsville, this weekend. California this weekend.
This weekend's California, then next weekend's Martinsville.
That's right. When we go back to Martinsville, all 3 series run, and that's where Chris is going to fall off the map. And Corey's going to take the lead once again, or at least inch up. Look, I entered into this knowing that Corey's probably going to kick my face in when it comes to the end of the season. I'll take the early lead. I'll be the Austin Dillon of this contest. I don't care. Having said that, Corey, we go to Auto Club Speedway this weekend. California. Home of Jeff Gordon. Home of Kevin Harvick. And we have 2 series running this weekend. Tell us all about it.
All right, so the Xfinity Series will be running on Saturday, 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Yes, guys, 5 o'clock Eastern Time, which the good news is I'm working this weekend, and more better news is I will be home in time for the race.
Yay!
Finally, so I get to do two things in one day, work and watch the race and get
Wow.
home on time.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah. And so let's see. So you got 5 o'clock Eastern Time on FS1 and, of course, Sirius XM Channel 90, which, of course, the Motor Racing Network, the
The
voice of
voice of
NASCAR.
NASCAR, whatever. Bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So looking at the entry list, so two Cup guys will be running this weekend, which will be the 8 of Ryan Preece and, of course, Kyle Busch in the 18 as well. And going down the list of notables, you have Cole Custer, you have Michael Annett, Tyler Reddick, you have Ross Chastain, you have Justin Allgaier, Greg Golding, Noah Gragson, Justin Haley, everybody's favorite BJ McLeod, not
Boom!
Bailey Curry, Brandon Jones, Christopher Bell, Austin Cindric, John Hunter Nemechek, Joey Gase, Ryan Sieg, Chad Fincham, Jeremy Clements. Let's see, Vinny Miller, Brandon Brown, Morgan Shepherd, and last but not least, Chase Briscoe.
Okay, give me a lock and give me a sleeper, my friend.
All right, so my lock for this weekend, this one's going to be pretty easy, pretty simple. I'm going to have to go Kyle Busch because not only he's been dominant at Auto Club Speedway for a number of years, he's won a couple of Xfinity races here, and I really think this is going to be the Kyle Busch show. I mean, it's only 150 laps, so anything can happen. So I think if you look at it, it's mostly going to be, pretty much Kyle Busch and Christopher Bell. That's going to be pretty much running the whole entire race, 1-2, no question about it. My sleeper, I'm going to have to go with Tyler Reddick on this one because last year at Michigan, when Austin Dillon won the Xfinity race, this just goes to show me that, if they're going to be running a similar package like they did a year ago, and, if Childress has that little strong power under the hood, I really think, Reddick could get that first win. And with him this year, he's had some few good runs this season. He could have won probably 2 races, maybe 1 or so. But I really think this is going to be a kid that's going to be fun to watch this weekend, especially driving that 2 car.
Well, I think you took Kyle Busch because you want to get some points back. And if there's one way to get some points back, it's by choosing Kyle Busch. But then again, like we said earlier, you, me, you more than anybody over the last year and a half, 2 years we've been doing this show. But Kyle Busch in a lawnmower, and he's going to find a way to win.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. All right, my lock this week is Cole Custer. He had a great finish last year. I think that his finishes this year have been just on par. This may be the week he breaks through and gets that win and cements himself into championship contention. My sleeper, when I look back at last year's race, and again, the spring races are always tough to gauge because it's the beginning of the season, kinks are being worked out. But the name that I saw consistently in the first 5 races of last year was Brandon Jones. So he's going to be my sleeper for the Xfinity race. And because I'm working late, I will unfortunately have to listen to MRN, the voice of NASCAR, and enjoy, if I can, the MRN experience. Okay, who am I kidding? I love MRN. I just love MRN. I can't play this game anymore. 5 weeks I've been doing this, and I can't do it anymore. I love MRN. They're my favorite. PRN, well, they're kind of growing on me, but they'll never be MRN.
Exactly.
All right, so Sunday, 3:30, Auto Club Speedway. Tell them all about it.
All right, so 3:30, the Auto Club 400, 3:30 on Fox, and, of course, MRN Motor Racing Network.
The voice of NASCAR.
There it is. There's
I owe you that, but at the same time, gimmick infringement. I'm still pursuing a lawsuit. I can't in good conscience let this slide.
Okay. All right. All right. So, looking at the entry list, of course, you got Kurt Busch, who I don't know was one at Auto Club, but let's see. You got Brad Keselowski, who's won there before. You have Austin Dillon. You have Kevin Harvick, who has a win there. Ryan Newman, Daniel Hemrick, Chase Elliott, Eric Almirola, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Ty Dillon, Clint Boyer, Ross Chastain, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Kyle Busch, who's won there before, Martin Truex Jr., who won last year, Eric Jones, Paul Menard, Joey Logano, William Byron, Corey LaJoy, Michael McDowell, Matt Tiff, Chris Buescher, David Reagan, Daniel Suarez, Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, Ryan Preece, Jimmy Johnson. And the last but not least, you have Alex Bowman and Matt DiBenedetto.
Okay. Why don't you give me your picks?
So my lock on this one, so this guy's had some really good runs the last few weeks. Of course, he's finished runner-up twice this year. So my lock, I'm going to have to go with Martin Truex Jr. So not only he won this race a year ago, but I really think this team has a lot of momentum right now. And of course, after finishing runner-up this past Sunday at Phoenix, pretty much showed me that, I think this is going to be the next driver that's going to win a race. But the question is when, and I really think this weekend Auto Club is going to be the place to do it. My sleeper, I'm going to have to go with Chase Elliott. I really want to see some really good improvement out of this 9 team. Hopefully they can get a win, like they had that breakout year a year ago. And, of course, my hopeful for this race, I'm going to have to go with Kyle Larson. Not only he won this race before, too, but I really want to see a lot of improvement out of this team as well. And let's not forget, guys, with this new aero package that NASCAR has in the Cup Series, we might see some exciting racing this weekend. And of course, with Auto Club being at a 2-mile racetrack, you're going to see some drafting, you're going to see some slingshots, some passing for the lead, and most but least would have to be the restarts. When you see the guys going into turn 1, like 3 wide, 4 wide, sometimes 5 wide, it gets really exciting. Everybody's all battling for the lead, battling for spots, and then especially on the backstretch, they all fan out like 3, 4 wide. I really think this is going to be an exciting race this weekend, and I really want to see what this new aero package could do. And like I said, so far, the first 3 races, I mean, we've seen some good racing. Restarts, we've seen some good passing for the lead, and we've seen some good spanning out like 3, 4 wide and so forth. But I have to tell you, I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing what goes on Sunday, and I'm really hoping this race could be fun to watch.
I'm hoping it's fun to watch. And before I get into my picks, I want to remind you guys, please go to anchor.fm/CJ Speedway Review. Leave your comments, leave some ratings, do whatever it takes. Click on some of our great sponsors and find a way to help the show out any way you can. Once again, that's anchor.fm/CJ Speedway Review. Now, for the love of God, I go back and I look at the results before I make my picks, and sometimes it's a blessing and sometimes it's a curse. I'm going to tell you guys 2 things. One, Corey and I are going to come in with the same lock. I also picked Martin Truex Jr. He did great last year at this track. I believe he won in the spring race last year at this track, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's won last year.
He drives the number 19, my lucky number. He's also my daughter's favorite driver, which I think some of that works into not only you and I picked because of our knowledge, but we picked because Chelsea loves Martin Truex. Emma loves Martin Truex. We all picked Martin Truex. My sleeper is going to be Joey Logano. Why is Joey Logano my sleeper? Not the greatest driver at California, but he's done well in the last few years. So I think Joey Logano has a really great chance to not only take the point lead back, but to cement himself and say, look, my championship wasn't a fluke. I've heard a lot of that over the last few weeks, by the way, on different platforms, that Joey Logano was a fluke champion. I don't believe that, and I don't think anybody else believes that, but if you believe that, that's fine. The second thing I'm going to tell you guys is I'm breaking my own rule. I told you every week I hope Kevin Harvick wins, and I said I would pick him as my hopeful every week. I lied this week because my friend Mark Azarju is coming back to town. I'm going to be watching the race with him at the Azarju Mini-Mansion. So hopeful, It'd be nothing better than to see that Miller Lite car, that number 2, that Blue Deuce, cross the finish line in California like it did in 2001, like it did in, I want to say, 2004, much like it has a couple different times. The Blue Deuce. It's all about the Blue Deuce, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Corey, soon to be Mr. Two What? I can't see all of that because of all the gimmickry at the bottom of my screen. What is the hashtag?
Hashtag soon to be Mr. 200.
You gotta be. You know what? There's a reason sometimes I don't want to do this, and there's a reason I do want to do it, but that's kind of cool.
Yes.
You think it's going to be this weekend? You really think it's going to be
I think it's going to be. I know Kyle's been really successful at this track before. I know he's won there a couple times. Of course, Xfinity, he's been dominant there before. And I really think this is the weekend that he could do it.
Okay, fair enough. I also, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. You have to battle names like Earnhardt, Petty, Johnson, going down the list, Wallace, Gordon. I'm looking at Cup victories alone. It's great to win on a bunch on the top 3 levels. It really is. And I'm not taking anything away from Kyle, but the top series is what people look at when they look at the bread and butter. Now, when first ballot Kyle Busch goes into the Hall of Fame, those wins mean everything.
Yeah.
But to the general public, there are, if I'm doing my math right, 11 drivers ahead of him on the all-time wins list. You got a lot of work to do, kid.
Yeah.
But he's gonna pass Rusty Wallace. Much a hate guy for years and years. He's gonna pass Dale Earnhardt. He may very well pass Jeff Gordon. He may very well pass Darrell Waltrip and Jimmy Johnson. But right now, for some of the talk I'm hearing out of Rowdy Nation, he's not the greatest. Get over it. But he's extremely talented. He's got the world ahead of him. He's 33 years old. This kid is he might rewrite the record books as we know it.
Oh, absolutely.
And for me to say that takes everything that I know and love and throws it out the window.
Right.
Okay. So, Corey, do you have anything to pimp, plug, or otherwise push upon the people?
Okay, so continue to follow us on the C+J Speedway Review. YouTube, make sure you guys look us up, subscribe, and of course, you'll get notifications on when we go live, when we upload. And if you have a person who is a race fan, please tell them about our show, recommend it to us or to them in that matter. Instagram, CJ Speedway, and then Twitter, CJ_Speedway as well. And also, one of my ats right now, follow me at Rowdy51 Racer. I think that's my Twitter account. And of course, I was racing down at Apex this past weekend. First race I did great. Second race I ended up finishing third, and the second race I ended up, everybody was crashing into each other, so it was kind of like Martinsville if you think about it. And third race after that I ended up winning, and it was the first time I was out in like 2 months, racing, and it felt great, and I was pretty happy that I ended up racing for the first time in a few months. It was awesome. But actually, one other question before we close this one out.
Sure.
So imagine
I have a question for you in a minute.
Imagine you're watching qualifying, and you end up watching a fight on pit road.
Okay.
This is what happened on Friday between Michael McDowell and Daniel Suarez, and this was actually kind of funny because this happened, and this is true, by the way. So this happened on Friday, and from what I heard in both interviews, I guess from what McDowell said, I guess he was running a really good lap time, and I guess he was pinching down Suarez on the bottom of the racetrack, so then Suarez wouldn't get a really good lap time. So then let's see, the other one makes it in, the other one doesn't. But what gets really interesting is that after the qualifying session's over, Suarez goes to McDowell's pit box, or where the crew guys are. So then, of course, you see Suarez hey, what was that all about? And the next thing you know, there was a fight that broke out on pit road. And not to mention, there was punches thrown, and then, of course, Suarez threw him down to the ground, whatever, with, of course, McDowell having the helmet on and everything. And what actually kind of struck me the most, and I think this was kind of odd, I said to myself on Friday, I said, out of all the races I've watched throughout my years, I've seen fights after the race like numerous amount of times, but I have never seen one in qualifying quite like what we just saw on Friday. And I was just like, I was like there's a fight in qualifying, and I don't even know like why this is happening. But yeah, I posted a video on my Facebook on Friday, and still, like, I couldn't even believe it. I mean, I thought it was like, I thought I was just like, wait, tell me if I'm not dreaming. But and I guess it made a lot of news this past weekend, which of course it made it to Fox News this past weekend too. And yeah, I mean, I would have to say with this new aero package, you might see a lot more fights this year than what everyone's expecting.
I've never been a fan of the qualifying that they do now. I always thought it was better when a car went out, turned the best 2 laps, you take the best lap time, you turn it in, and that's your spot. Having said that, I'm also not a fan of taking the fastest guy and putting him up front. I'm a big believer in the Matt Kenseth rule, where he came up through the Wisconsin ranks, and much like Matt Kenseth, Dick Trickle, and guys before them, the fastest car starts in the back. I still believe to this day, if you're the fastest car, start in the back, prove your worth. But hey, it is what it is. No, never have I ever seen a fight during qualifying. Really, really interesting. My observation on that is Daniel Suarez has a power bomb that would make him WWE champion tomorrow.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Oh yeah, it pretty much. I give Suarez credit too.
Oh yeah, he stood up for himself. And the funny thing is, if you read the quotes a day or two later, where McDowell and Suarez made up and went to a hockey game in Phoenix.
Yeah.
They went and saw the Coyotes. Great job. It just goes to show you that there's tempers on the track, and then there's humans off the track. So the heat of the battle may or may not matter. Look, 2 of the best friends in the world were Rusty Wallace and Dale Earnhardt. How many times I saw those 2 throwing water bottles at each other and MF and kiss my stuff and stick it down your mouth in the pit lane after the race. At the end of the day, they're on each other's boats going fishing during the week while the cars are being built. It's what you don't see that makes it interesting.
Right.
Now, I don't remember. I remember Angela and I got together in 2014, so I want to say it was sometime during that year. Angela got introduced to NASCAR, and we watched a race, and for whatever reason, there was a cameraman that followed Matt Kenseth between the haulers, and I want to say it was Brad Keselowski that attacked him like an angry WWE wrestler in between the haulers, and there was a fight. I was not in the room, and I hear, "You got to come back in here. They're fighting." Like, holy crap. Whatever I'm doing, I'm leaving. I'm coming back in the room. Luckily, had the TiVo gimmick where you can rewind it. I'm like, oh my God, they really did. There was like Pearl Harbor Jones right there.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it was Keselowski and Kenseth. Am I wrong?
Well, it was actually kind of funny because now that you say that, I was at that race when that happened.
No kidding.
Yeah. And
Wow.
and actually it was funny because that was at Charlotte in 2014, and I remember single-handedly
the May race.
Yep, no, the night race in October.
October, you're correct.
Yep.
It had to be October because
Yep.
we weren't together during the May race. You're absolutely right.
And what's actually kind of funny was not only Kevin Harvick won the race, but Brad Keselowski had some enemies that night. So I remember during that race, there was one restart. I guess Keselowski kind of pinched Kenseth up in the wall, or whatever. And then Kenseth had side damage or whatever. And then under yellow, Kenseth kind of gave him a little bump or so and saying like, "Hey, like, why did you do that? Blah, blah, blah." And then closing laps of the race, not only Keselowski gets into Kenseth the early part of the race, but then in the closing laps, he gets into Denny Hamlin. So then that resulted in, of course, Keselowski trying to wreck Hamlin's car after the race is over. And then next thing you know, Keselowski tried to wreck Kens's car. And then next thing you know, Keselowski gets into the back of Tony Stewart. So then what does Tony Stewart do? He ends up going into reverse and then hits Keselowski's front bumper. Then that showed Stewart saying, like, if you're going to run into me, this is what I'm going to do, and so forth. But what got really interesting was that post-race altercation. So at first, it started off with Keselowski versus Denny Hamlin. So Hamlin wanted to fight him. And then Hamlin's crew guys is pulling him back. So now they're bringing Hamlin to the hauler. And then, of course, Hamlin throws a towel or something. And then there's some choice of words and whatnot. And then Keselowski, he goes back to his hauler. And then just when you thought that was going to be fine, that was when Matt Kenseth jumped in. And then he kind of grabs him in like a headlock or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that's when words were exchanged. And then that's when all the crew guys came out and scuffle this, scuffle that. And yeah, I actually remember that night really vividly. And I sometimes watch that video on YouTube, and it just made me think, like, Keselowski had a lot of rivals back then, but that's just how Brad's racing style is. I mean, it wasn't until a month later where he also got into an altercation with none other than Jeff Gordon.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things you have to say about Brad Keselowski is over the years, he's really come up and become a more respectful driver. I can remember Brad Keselowski at Talladega turning Carl Edwards and sending Carl Edwards into the fence. And Corey, if you will do our fans one favor and share that video on our page when this is all done, because I will forget. I'm old. I forget things. Plus, there's hot, delicious pizza upstairs I want to eat. Having said that, watching Brad Keselowski as a young upstart rookie in that 09 Miccosukee Casino car on the restart, turn Carl Edwards and to watch Carl Edwards' car go into the air, no matter how many safety features they have then, even now, and to watch him barrel into the catch fence, and me thinking, oh my God, I just watched Carl Edwards die. And then seeing Carl Edwards in the infield afterwards giving an interview, well, it was a racing deal and we were doing this, Diplomatic Jones. It was just, that's when I knew Brad Keselowski was going to be somebody. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the 2009 fall Talladega race.
Spring race.
Okay. See? I was half right. It was Brad Keselowski. It was Talladega. Well, I was 2/3 right. Give me credit where credit's due. I get 1 point for that. No, I'm kidding. But you just learn that when the young guy is not going to take it anymore, and he does that, a la Rusty Wallace, Jeff Gordon, Chase Elliott, you've been bullied so much, and now you're going to give back. Brad Keselowski was a made man at that point. So, going back to that Charlotte race in 2014, you're right. He made a lot of enemies that night, but he also cemented himself as, if you F with me, I'm going to F with you back. And that was the state of the union at that point. Guys, please don't forget, check out anchor.fm/CJ Speedway Review. Leave your reviews, leave comments, check out our sponsors. And I also want to mention that if you are in the Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut area, April 7th, the other podcast, the Logan Jabroni Show, is going to be live at the Deck in Westbrook, Connecticut, bringing you the WrestleMania party of the century. We have trivia. The restaurant has wing specials, drink specials. It's going to be a great time. It is also the 4th anniversary of the Logan Jabroni Show that night. So please, if you can, join us. If you can't, sit home and enjoy the race that's going on that day, which April 7th, I think, is going to be... Which race is on April 7th, Corey?
Bristol.
Brett, oh my God. So I'm going to have Tim turn on one of the 18 TVs that you could potentially watch that day and have one TV have the race on so I can watch it while the Logan Jabroni Show does their WrestleMania bit. Bristol day race. So it'll be over by the time the main card starts at 6 p.m. So... I might get there early. I might get there at noon and watch the race and already be fed so I can do the broadcast uninterrupted. It's going to be live streamed on the Looking to Run a YouTube channel. So please come down, have fun. Corey, if you and the missus are available, come down and see how the other half lives in the podcast world.
Well, I'll just have to look at my schedule and see.
Well, you'll just have. Yeah, I understand. Trust me, I understand. Chelsea, he loves you. I'm waving now.
And I do love you, Chelsea.
And Emma, Angela, Maddie, everybody, I love you too. So having said that, we will come back next week with our recap of California and the preview of Martinsville, the paper clip that takes people out and makes you wish you were never born, because it is one of the toughest tracks on the NASCAR circuit. He's Corey, I'm Chris, and with the two most famous words in C&J Speedway review history, I throw it to Corey Huffnagel.
Good night.
Where is Eddie?
Speaking of which, have you had a chance to watch Dale Jr. download on NBC Sports?
I have not. Which is that an app on my phone that I can get?
I think you could watch it on the NBC Sports app, but it's actually funny because Dale Jr. had all these special guests on his show. Like he's had guys like Tony Stewart, the Yuri Boys, Ryan Blaney, and then just last week he had special guest none other than Steve Park.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. I was just reading. It's funny. Again, going back to the MRN thing, all of you who are on YouTube before Eddie cuts off the feed, again, I overdosed in the last 4 days on that MRN series, which was 1993, the season it was. And then I got to thinking about where everything went since 1993. And I looked up Steve Park because I know he had a terrible, terrible accident. I wanted to see, where he was, how he's doing, et cetera, so forth. To think back to that 2001 season where, just weeks after Earnhardt died, that Steve Park comes out and gets a checkered flag and top of the moon, man. He's just elated. And then I want to say it was a year later, he got in that horrific accident on the Xfinity series, then the Busch series. Man, how his life changed. That was a guy I thought back in 2001, and one of my friends or ex-friends works for NASCAR now, and I said, Steve Park, that's a kid to watch. Now, every time I say there's a kid to watch, I'm usually pretty good. Steve Park was the exception to the rule.
Right.
Because of that accident, everything, much like Ricky Craven. When Ricky Craven he had one horrific crash in 96 where he caught the catch fence in Talladega, went ass over tea kettle, lands on the top of Bill Elliott's car. If you remember that was the what year was that? Cripes. No, that was 96 because it was the number 41 Kodiak car. And then he goes on to win 2 years later with the Tide car, the number 32 at Darlington, with that door-to-door run against Kurt Busch. So, Ricky Craven gets in a wreck, and he's one of the most brilliant analysts you'll ever see. However, his racing career didn't go much further because of the accident and because of, the partial paralysis that he goes through. Steve Park, Ricky Craven, those were guys that now I have two. When you look at a guy and you go, I failed. Whereas I look back at a guy like Jeff Gordon, Kevin Harvick, as much as I hate to say it, Kyle Busch, I looked at those guys. Kyle Busch, when he was in the number 5 Bear Aspirin car on the Busch series, I said, that kid's going to be something.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of upset that I said that, but whatever. A lot of these guys that have come up and done good things, Brad Keselowski, same thing. Where's Eddie? We're getting killed right now. But hey, for all you who are still on the YouTube, I'm going to sing in about 30 seconds. It's all good.
But So to get the Dale Jr. download, I believe it's on dalejr.com, and then also I think you can get his full episodes. I think on iTunes and Google.
I have iTunes. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah.
What's the name of it again?
Dale Jr. Download.
Dale Jr. Download. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And it's actually a really cool podcast show because it's with him and of course this guy Mike Davis that's on the show every Tuesday, and like I said, they've had some very interesting guests on their show. They've had guys like Tony Stewart and Steve Park, and then of course Jeffrey Earnhardt, and then of course Dale Jr. also has some topics that he usually discusses that are pretty interesting too.
Okay, cool. I'll look it up.
Oh yeah.
Now here comes the part where if you're still on YouTube with us and you're watching the after hours events, this is where I start to sing. She was afraid to come out of the water. She was afraid that somebody would see. And Eddie's probably dealing with his stepdaughter because she got grounded last week because she lied and ate a bunch of crackers. Chicken in the corn on the corn can. Mama, yeah. I learned that song, by the way. Look at my shit. It just fell. Oops. All right. This will be cut out of the main Anchor FM iTunes gimmick.
Yeah.
But, man, I learned that song. I would listen to that song on the way home for the last week. I'm like, I'm gonna stick that to Corey so hard. I love it. I think it's catchy.
Me at 1:30 in the morning.
Chicken in the corn with the corn name.
Oh man. And then of course there's Eddie.
You and the missus, as we're still live on YouTube. Anybody who's still here with us, congratulations. You're stronger than we are.